Your brain is being hijacked right now, and you don't even know it. Let me tell you something I discovered after years working in therapy. Most people who come to see me desperate, exhausted, feeling they can't take it anymore, don't need years of therapy, they need 1 week, just 1 week where everything changes. And I know that sounds impossible. I know you're probably thinking, another psychologist selling magic solutions. But stay with me, because what I'm going to share with you today isn't magic. It's pure neuroscience, and it works even when you don't think it will. Before I continue, if this content resonates with you, if you feel you need this change, give me that like right now. Not for me, but because that simple gesture tells your brain you're committed to your transformation. And believe me, that commitment is the first step. I've spent over 15 years listening to stories in my practice. Stories of brilliant, capable people with all the potential in the world, completely trapped in versions of themselves they don't recognize. And the most painful part is that many of them have been like this for years, thinking that change is slow, that transformation requires months or years of constant work. And yes, deep change does take time, but there's something I've learned that's going to sound radical. You can become an unrecognizable person in just 7 days. But be careful, and this is crucial, unrecognizable doesn't mean better in everything. Unrecognizable means different. And here comes the first serious warning I want to give you. This process can be uncomfortable, it can stir up things you've been avoiding for years, it can make the people around you not understand what's happening to you, because when you change, the system around you has to readjust, and not everyone likes that. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. This week I'm going to talk about isn't a week of superficial self-care, of baths with salts and aromatic candles. I'm not talking about changing your haircut or your way of dressing. I'm talking about intervening in the neural circuits that keep you trapped in patterns that are stealing your life, and that requires courage. Right now there's something in your life that's consuming you. It could be the anxiety you feel every morning when you wake up. It could be that relationship that drains your energy. It could be the job you hate but go to like an automaton. It could be that version of yourself you see in the mirror and don't recognize. Whatever it is, that something has a neurobiological origin and therefore a neurobiological solution. But before giving you the tools, I need you to understand something fundamental. Your brain doesn't want you to change. Your brain is designed for survival, not for happiness. And survival means predictability, routine, the known, even if the known is painful. That's why change is so difficult. It's not a lack of willpower, it's not that you're weak, it's that you're fighting against millions of years of evolution. And here comes something they won't tell you elsewhere. Quick change can be dangerous if you don't know how to handle it. I've seen people who try to transform overnight and end up worse than they were because they don't understand the mechanisms. That's why I'm going to give you not just the what, but the how and the why. And above all, I'm going to warn you about the traps. At the end of this video, I'm going to tell you something that very few people know, something that completely changes the way we understand personal transformation, something that has to do with a specific temporal window in your brain that opens only under certain conditions. But for you to understand that final concept, you need the complete journey. So I ask for your patience, because each part of what I'm going to share with you builds on the previous one. Let's start from the beginning. Your brain weighs about 1.5 kilos and consumes 20% of all your energy. It's an incredibly efficient machine, but also incredibly lazy. And when I say lazy, I don't mean it pejoratively, I mean it literally. Your brain is constantly looking for ways to spend less energy, to automate processes, to create shortcuts. Those shortcuts are what we call habits, thought patterns, beliefs. And here's the problem. Many of those shortcuts were created when you were a child, when your brain was developing, when you didn't have the tools to process reality maturely. And yet, you're still using those same neural circuits decades later. Imagine you have an internal GPS that was programmed when you were 7 years old. That GPS still tells you how to get places, which roads to take, what to avoid, but the city has completely changed. There are new roads, shortcuts that didn't exist, but your GPS keeps insisting on the old routes. That's your brain, that's what keeps you trapped. A few months ago, a 38-year-old woman came to my practice, professionally successful, with a family that loved her, but completely disconnected from herself. She told me something I'll never forget. Lisa Firestone, I feel like I'm watching my life from the outside, as if it were a movie where I'm not the protagonist. And when we started exploring, we discovered that her brain had created that dissociation mechanism when she was a teenager to survive a very demanding family environment. The problem is that mechanism was still active 20 years later in a completely different context. And this is what's fascinating and at the same time terrifying. Your brain doesn't know the difference between past and present when it's emotionally activated. That's why you can be 30, 40, 50 years old and still react like a 6-year-old when someone criticizes or rejects you. It's not immaturity, it's neurobiology. But here comes the good news, the news that changes everything: neuroplasticity. Your brain can change, it can create new connections, it can prune old ones, it can reprogram itself, but it needs specific conditions to do so. And those conditions can be created in a week. I'm not saying that in a week you'll resolve decades of trauma. I'm not saying that in a week you'll become the best version of yourself forever. I'm saying that in a week you can break the circuit, you can interrupt the pattern, you can create a crack in the system, and that crack is the beginning of everything. Now I need to talk to you about something that's probably ruining your life right now and you don't know it. Cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone, and in small doses it's wonderful. It helps you get up in the morning, gives you energy, keeps you alert. The problem is that most people I know live in a state of chronic elevated cortisol. And chronic cortisol is devastating. It literally eats your brain. It atrophies the hippocampus, which is the area responsible for memory and learning. It hypertrophies the amygdala, which is your fear center, makes you gain weight especially around the waist, destroys your immune system, ruins your skin, takes away your sleep, and worst of all, it robs you of the ability to feel joy. I've had patients who tell me, Lisa Firestone, I don't enjoy anything anymore, nothing excites me. And when we analyze their lifestyle, it turns out they're living in a state of constant hyperactivation. They work 12 hours, sleep 5, eat poorly, don't exercise, are permanently connected to their phone, compulsively check the news, live in a state of perpetual alert. Your body doesn't know the difference between a lion chasing you and a boss yelling at you. For your nervous system, both are threats, and if the threat is constant, your body stays in survival mode, and in survival mode you can't create, you can't connect, you can't love fully, you can't be yourself. So the first mission of this week, the first thing you have to do if you really want to become an unrecognizable person, is to lower your cortisol. And it's not as complicated as it seems, but it requires radical decisions. First, you have to sleep, and not 5 or 6 hours. You need between 7 and 9 hours of quality sleep. And I already know what you're thinking, I don't have time. Well, then you don't have time to change. It's that simple. Sleep is when your brain literally cleans itself. There's a system called the glymphatic system that only activates during deep sleep and eliminates toxins from the brain. If you don't sleep, those toxins accumulate, and one of those toxins is beta amyloid, which is directly related to Alzheimer's. Second, you have to move. And I'm not talking about grinding in the gym for 2 hours, I'm talking about daily movement, preferably outdoors, preferably with natural light. 30 minutes of walking can reduce your cortisol by up to 20%. 30 minutes? That's less time than you spend scrolling aimlessly on Instagram. Third, you have to leave your phone. And here comes one of the most important things I'm going to say in this entire video, something that relates directly to that final concept I'm going to talk about. So pay close attention. Your phone is destroying your ability to pay attention, and without the ability to pay attention, no transformation is possible. We live in the age of constant distraction. Your phone is a dopamine machine designed by the best engineers in the world to keep you hooked. Every notification, every like, every message is a small dopamine hit that reinforces the reward circuit. And here's the problem. Dopamine and cortisol are intimately related. When you compulsively seek dopamine through external stimuli, your cortisol goes up. It's a perverse paradox. You seek pleasure, but you generate stress. But there's something even more serious. Your ability to sustain attention is directly related to your ability to change. If you can't maintain attention on something for more than 3 minutes, you can't create new neural circuits. It's impossible. Neuroplasticity requires sustained attention, repetition, deliberate practice, and most people have completely lost that ability. They check their phone every 3 minutes. They can't watch a movie without being on their phone. They can't hold a conversation without looking at the screen. They can't read a book for more than 5 minutes without getting distracted. And then they wonder, why can't they change? Why can't they meditate? Why can't they concentrate? Why do they feel empty? It's because their brain is completely fragmented. During this week, you're going to have to do something radical. Limit your phone use to specific times of the day. And I know this generates resistance. I know your brain is going to scream, it's going to invent excuses, it's going to tell you it's impossible, that you need to be connected for work, for family, for whatever, but the truth is you don't need to be available 24 hours a day. Nobody needs that. Let me tell you something personal. Years ago, I was also completely hooked on my phone. I answered messages at 11 at night, checked email on Sunday morning, slept with my phone on the nightstand, and one day I realized I had lost something fundamental, the ability to be bored. And true boredom without external stimuli is where the magic happens. It's where your brain processes, integrates, creates. Now I have time slots where I don't touch my phone, and at first it was distressing. I felt a physical anxiety as if I were missing something crucial, but that anxiety is false. It's your brain asking for its dose of dopamine. And when you learn to tolerate that discomfort, when you learn to be with yourself without distractions, everything changes. Now let's talk about something many people underestimate: food. Your brain is a physical organ that needs specific nutrients to function, and if you're feeding it junk, it's going to function like junk. It's that simple. Sugar is probably your brain's number one enemy. Sugar generates glucose spikes that are followed by sharp drops, and those glucose roller coasters translate into emotional roller coasters. You feel good for half an hour and then you crash. And your brain, desperate to feel good again, asks you for more sugar. It's a vicious cycle. Additionally, sugar generates inflammation, and brain inflammation is directly related to depression, anxiety, attention deficit, and cognitive decline. There are studies showing that people who consume a lot of sugar have up to a 30% higher chance of developing depression. But it's not just about eliminating the bad, it's about adding the good. Your brain needs healthy fats, omega-3s, olive oil, avocado, nuts. It needs quality protein to produce neurotransmitters. It needs leafy green vegetables, rich in folate and magnesium. It needs hydration, lots of clean water. During this week, I ask you to do a radical experiment. Eliminate processed sugar, alcohol, ultra-processed foods. Eat real food, vegetables, fruits, quality protein, healthy fats, and observe how you feel. You don't need a perfect diet forever. Just 1 week of properly feeding your brain to see the difference. And here comes something important. The connection between your gut and your brain is direct. It's called the gut-brain axis. Your gut produces 90% of your serotonin, which is the happiness neurotransmitter. If your gut is inflamed, full of bad bacteria, fed with junk food, your serotonin production plummets, and without serotonin, well-being is impossible. Now let's enter tricky territory. Let's talk about people, and this is difficult because often the people who are hurting us are those we love most: family, partner, lifelong friends. But I need you to understand something. Toxic relationships make you sick, literally. Being with someone who constantly criticizes you, invalidates you, makes you feel small, manipulates you, makes you doubt yourself, activates your stress system in the same way as physical trauma. And the worst part is that often these relationships are so subtle that we don't identify them. There are no shouts, no physical violence, but there's a constant drip of hurtful comments, devaluations disguised as jokes, emotional manipulation, guilt-tripping. I remember a patient who came a while ago completely exhausted. He told me that his partner constantly criticized him, how he dressed, how he spoke, his decisions, his family, but always with a smile, always ending with "it's for your own good." And he had believed that the problem was his, that he was too sensitive, that he had to change, until one day he realized he had stopped being himself. He had become a diluted, fearful version, constantly on alert about himself. During this week, you're going to have to do something very brave. Identify who adds to you and who subtracts from you, and once identified, set boundaries. And I know this is scary, especially if the toxic person is someone close, but setting boundaries isn't selfish. Setting boundaries is emotional survival. A boundary can be as simple as, "I won't let you speak to me in that tone," or "I need space," or "this topic is not open for discussion." You don't have to be aggressive, you don't necessarily have to break relationships, but you have to stop allowing people to treat you in ways that harm you. And here comes something few people understand. When you set healthy boundaries, people who truly love you respect them. They might be surprised, they might need time to adjust, but they respect them. Toxic people, on the other hand, get angry, manipulate you, make you feel guilty, try to break those boundaries, and that tells you everything you need to know. I need to pause here to talk about something that's completely counterintuitive in our hyperconnected society: the need to be alone. I'm not talking about isolation, I'm not talking about avoiding people, I'm talking about chosen, conscious, nutritious solitude. We live in a culture that has demonized solitude. Being alone is perceived as something sad, as a social failure. And that's why many people fill every free moment with activities, with noise, with people, with anything that avoids being alone with their thoughts. But being alone is where you find yourself, where you process your emotions, where you listen to your inner voice that has been silenced by years of external noise. It's where you can truly ask yourself, what do I want? What do I feel? Who am I when I'm not playing a role for others? During this week you need moments of real solitude, not solitude with your phone in hand, not solitude with Netflix in the background, but silent solitude where there's nothing but you and your thoughts. And I know this will be uncomfortable. Emotions you've been avoiding will surface, thoughts you've been burying will appear. There will be moments of anxiety, boredom, restlessness. Let them be, don't reject them, don't distract yourself. Observe them because those emotions, those thoughts contain crucial information about yourself. They are the signals your body and mind have been trying to send you, but you've been ignoring. Now let's go deeper. Your internal dialogue, the voice in your head, the one that comments on everything you do, everything that happens to you, everything you are. That voice has immense power over your life, and in most cases that voice is cruel, critical, merciless. Think about how you talk to yourself when you make a mistake. You probably say things you would never say to a friend. You're an idiot, you always mess up. You're good for nothing, nobody will ever love you. That kind of talk isn't harmless. Each one is like a hammer blow to your self-esteem, your confidence, your sense of worth. And what's interesting is that often that critical voice isn't even yours. It's the voice of your father, your mother, a teacher, someone who marked you in childhood, but you've internalized it so much that now you think it's your own voice, your own opinion about yourself. During this week I ask you to do something. Observe your internal dialogue. Don't try to change it yet, just observe it. Become aware of how many times a day you criticize yourself, judge yourself, devalue yourself. And when you catch it, ask yourself, whose voice is this really? Would I talk to someone I love like this? Because here's the key. You can choose to change that narrative, not overnight, not with false positive affirmations you don't believe, but you can start to question it. When your mind tells you, you're a failure, you can respond, that's an opinion, not a fact. When it tells you nobody loves you, you can respond, I have evidence to the contrary. It's not about deceiving yourself, it's about being objective. Most of the time, your inner critic is distorting reality, magnifying the negative, minimizing the positive, and those distortions keep you trapped. Let's return to the body because all this about the brain, emotions, thoughts doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in a physical body that needs to move. We're designed for movement. Our ancestors walked kilometers every day, hunted, gathered, ran, climbed, and yet, we spend 8, 10, 12 hours sitting, and that immobility has devastating consequences. Physical exercise is probably the most effective antidepressant that exists. I'm not exaggerating. There are studies showing that regular exercise is as effective as medication for cases of mild to moderate depression. Why? Because exercise releases endorphins, which are your natural opioids, increases the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is like fertilizer for your neurons. It reduces cortisol, improves your sleep, increases your energy, but here's the trap. When you're depressed, anxious, or exhausted, the last thing you feel like doing is moving. Your body is in energy-saving mode. Your brain tells you rest, don't do anything. And if you listen to it, the cycle deepens. That's why you need to move, especially when you least feel like it. I'm not talking about running a marathon. I'm talking about going for a 15-minute walk, taking stairs, dancing in your room, stretching, anything that gets your body out of sedentary mode. And there's something specific I want you to understand about exercise. It's not about punishing yourself, it's not about compensating for what you ate, it's not about forcing your body into a specific shape. It's about honoring your body, celebrating what it can do, releasing accumulated tension. When you exercise with that intention, with that energy, everything changes. It's no longer an obligation, it's a gift you give yourself. Now I want to talk about something radical that will generate resistance, stimulus fasting. I'm not talking about food fasting, although that can also be beneficial. I'm talking about a sensory and cognitive fast. We live in a constant overload of stimuli. Noise, lights, notifications, information, images, music, conversations. Our brain is being constantly bombarded, and that constant bombardment depletes your cognitive resources, fragments your attention, keeps you in a state of perpetual activation. During this week, dedicate at least 1 hour a day to a complete fast of stimuli. No phone, no computer, no television, no music, no reading, no conversations. Just you in silence, preferably in a quiet space. And here comes the important part. That hour will be uncomfortable. Your brain will resist, it will generate anxiety, restlessness, boredom. You'll feel an almost physical urgency to do something, to distract yourself, to fill the void. Don't do it. Sit with that discomfort, because what will happen is that your nervous system, finally freed from the need to constantly process information, will start to regulate itself, will start to discharge all accumulated tension. And in that space of silence and stillness, things will start to emerge. Emotions you've been avoiding, thoughts you've been burying, insights about your life you've been ignoring. This is one of the most powerful exercises you can do, and also one of the most difficult because it forces us to face ourselves without distractions, without escapes, without masks. Now let's enter one of the most complicated and painful territories, forgiveness. And before you close off, before you think there are unforgivable things, listen to me to the end, because it's probably not what you think. Forgiveness is not saying that what they did to you is okay, it's not justifying the harm, it's not forgetting, it's not reconciling with who hurt you, it's not allowing it to happen again. Forgiveness is letting go of the poison you carry inside. When you hold resentment, anger, hatred towards someone who hurt you, the person who suffers most is you, not them, you. Because every time you remember what happened, every time you relive the pain, your body generates the same stress hormones as if it were happening right now. Your amygdala activates, your cortisol rises, your immune system depresses. It's like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. It doesn't work that way. And the saddest part is that many people build their entire identity around their trauma, their pain, what was done to them. And it's understandable, especially if it was something terrible. But there comes a time when you have to ask yourself, do I want to continue being the person to whom this happened, or do I want to be the person who overcame that? Forgiveness is for you, not for them. It's your decision to stop carrying that weight. It's your decision to reclaim your power, because as long as you remain emotionally tied to who hurt you, that person still has power over you. Now, this doesn't mean it's easy, it doesn't mean it happens overnight. Forgiveness is a process, sometimes long and painful, and there are things that take years to forgive, but you can start during this week. Identify something small, something you're holding on to, something that weighs on you. It doesn't have to be a giant trauma. It could be something someone said to you months ago that you're still ruminating on. It could be something a friend did to you. It could be something you did to yourself. And practice letting go. You don't have to call the person, you don't have to say anything. Just in your interior, consciously dissolve it. I no longer want to carry this. I free myself from this weight. And every time the thought, the resentment returns, repeat the process over and over until it loses its strength. And here comes something important. Often the person you most need to forgive is yourself, for the decisions you made, for the mistakes you made, for the opportunities you missed, for not having been who you thought you should be. Self-punishment doesn't make you a better person, it only makes you a smaller person. Forgive yourself not because what you did was okay, but because you deserve the opportunity to grow beyond your mistakes. Let's now talk about something that's absolutely fundamental, and yet many people never consider, your purpose. And I'm not talking about your life purpose in grandiose, abstract terms, I'm talking about your reason for getting up every morning. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, discovered something profound in the concentration camps. People who had a purpose, a meaning, something to keep going for had much higher chances of surviving than those who had lost all sense of meaning. And from that, his theory was born. Human beings can endure any suffering if they find meaning in it. Now, your life probably isn't a concentration camp, but that principle still holds true. If you don't have a sense of purpose, if your days are a mechanical succession of meaningless tasks, your brain interprets that as an existential threat, and it responds with apathy, depression, anxiety. Purpose doesn't have to be saving the world. It can be small, it can be simple, it can be raising your children in the best possible way, it can be creating art, it can be helping your community, it can be mastering a skill, it can be taking care of someone who needs you. The important thing is that it gives meaning to your existence. And here comes something I've observed in practice over and over again. People who have a clear purpose are much more resilient to stress. It's not that they don't suffer, they do, but that suffering has a context, it has meaning. It's not random, senseless suffering, which is the type of suffering that breaks us the most. During this week, you need to ask yourself an honest question: why do I get up every morning? And if the answer is to go to work to pay the bills because we have to keep going, then you need to dig deeper because that's not enough. That won't sustain you in difficult times. Ask yourself, if you had unlimited resources and didn't have to worry about money, what would you do with your time? What excites you? What makes you feel alive? What would you do even if they didn't pay you for it? Those answers contain clues about your purpose. And no, I'm not saying you quit your job and dedicate yourself to your passion just like that. That's irresponsible and not what I'm proposing. But you can start integrating elements of your purpose into your current life, small steps, small decisions, little by little. We need to talk about something that's in absolute crisis in our society, real human connection. I'm not talking about followers on social media, I'm not talking about contacts on LinkedIn, I'm talking about genuine, vulnerable, deep connection with other human beings. Humans are social animals. We're designed to live in tribes, to be in close contact with a small group of people who know us deeply. And yet, many people live in brutal isolation, surrounded by people but profoundly alone. And loneliness kills, not metaphorically, literally. There are studies showing that chronic loneliness is as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases your risk of premature death by 50%. It increases your risk of dementia, cardiovascular disease, depression. But here's the problem. Real connection requires vulnerability, requires showing yourself as you are with your fears, your insecurities, your imperfections. And that's terrifying because when you show yourself vulnerable, you can be rejected, judged, hurt. That's why many people have hundreds of friends but no one with whom they can be completely honest. They have superficial conversations, friendly exchanges, but never real connection, and inside they feel deeply alone. During this week, I ask you to take a step toward vulnerability. Find someone you trust, even minimally, and share something real. It doesn't have to be your deepest trauma. It can simply be admitting that you're going through a difficult time, that you're scared, that you don't have all the answers, that you need help. And observe what happens. In most cases, when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you give the other person permission to do the same. And in that exchange of vulnerability is where the magic happens, where real connection is created. I had a patient who told me he had no real friends, and when we explored his way of relating, I realized he was always in everything's fine mode, always strong, always controlled, always helping others but never asking for help. And the people around him didn't really know him because he didn't let himself be known. I proposed an experiment. The next time someone asked him, "How are you?" Instead of automatically answering, "Fine," he would respond honestly, even if it was uncomfortable, even if it was vulnerable. And he did. And the other person, instead of moving away, came closer, shared their own struggles, and a real friendship was born. Now I need to pause to warn you about something crucial. I've been talking about how you can become an unrecognizable person in a week, and it's possible, but you need to understand the risks. Rapid change can be destabilizing. When you change radically, the people around you don't always understand it. Your family might feel threatened, your partner might resist, your friends might distance themselves because you were fulfilling a role in their lives. And when that role changes, the whole system has to readjust, and that can be painful, can generate conflict, can make you question if you're doing the right thing. That's why it's so important that this change comes from a genuine place, from a real need, not from an impulse to escape your problems. Additionally, rapid change can generate a kind of initial euphoria. Everything is new, everything is exciting, you feel like you're finally living, but that euphoria eventually fades, and when it fades, you need to have structures in place to sustain the changes. If not, you'll return to your old patterns. That's why this week isn't the end, it's the beginning, it's the interruption of the pattern, but then comes the work of consolidation, of making these changes sustainable over time. You also need to be honest with yourself about whether you're ready for this change. Sometimes there are reasons why we cling to our destructive patterns. Sometimes they give us something, attention, an excuse not to try new things, a way to avoid responsibility. And if you're not willing to let go of those secondary benefits, the change won't be sustainable. I want to give you a specific tool that's incredibly powerful: expressive writing. I'm not talking about keeping a nice journal with inspirational phrases. I'm talking about writing in a raw, honest, unfiltered way about what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what's happening to you. There are decades of research on expressive writing. Several psychological studies discovered that writing about traumatic or emotionally difficult experiences for only 15 or 20 minutes a day, for 4 consecutive days, has profound effects on physical and mental health. People who do this exercise show improvements in their immune function, reduction in doctor visits, decreased blood pressure, improved mood, better academic and work performance. And what's fascinating is that these effects persist months after finishing the exercise. Why does it work? Because when you write about something that hurts you, you're forcing your brain to organize the experience, to give it a narrative structure, to find meaning in it, and in that process of organization, the experience loses part of its emotional charge. Additionally, many times we have thoughts and emotions that go round and round in our heads without resolution. It's like having 20 tabs open in your mental browser. When you write them down, you take them out of your head onto paper, and that frees up cognitive resources. During this week, dedicate 20 minutes each day to writing without censorship, without worrying about spelling or grammar. No one will read it, just you and the paper. Write about what hurts you, what scares you, what angers you, what confuses you. And afterward, if you want, rip it up, burn it, throw it away. The goal isn't to keep it, the goal is to get it out. And here comes something important. The first few days you'll feel worse. It's normal. You're stirring up things you've buried, but if you continue with the process, by the third or fourth day, something changes. You start to see patterns, to have insights, to understand things differently, and that understanding is liberating. We need to talk about something that many people find terribly difficult: saying no. We live in a culture of yes. Being helpful, being available, making sacrifices for others is valued, and all that is beautiful when it comes from a genuine place. The problem is when you say yes when you want to say no. Every time you say yes to something you don't want to do, you're saying no to something else. You're saying no to your time, to your energy, to your peace of mind. And then you wonder, why are you exhausted? Why don't you have time for yourself? Why doesn't your life belong to you? Many people, especially those who have been raised to please, have a deep fear of conflict, rejection, disappointing others. That's why they say yes to everything and fill themselves with commitments they don't want, responsibilities that aren't theirs, demands that exhaust them. And here comes the irony. When you say yes to everything, your yes loses value. People start taking you for granted, assume you'll always be available, and when you finally say no, they're surprised, offended, make you feel guilty. During this week, practice saying no. Start with small things, low-risk things. Someone asks you for a favor you could do but don't want to do. Say no without elaborate justifications, without complex excuses. A simple "I can't" or "it doesn't work for me" is enough. And observe what happens in your body when you say no. You'll probably feel discomfort, guilt, anxiety. Those are signals from your old programming, your need to please. Don't reject them, observe them, breathe through them, and let them pass, because on the other side of no is your freedom. On the other side of no is your time. On the other side of no is you. And now we come to the concept I promised you at the beginning, the one that changes everything. Pay close attention, because this is crucial. Your brain has moments of greater plasticity, moments when it's more open to change, and those moments are called plasticity windows. They normally occur during childhood and adolescence, when your brain is in full development, but they can also open in adulthood under specific conditions. What are those conditions? States of high emotional activation, novel, intense experiences, situations that break your habitual patterns. That's why moments of crisis, although painful, are often moments of transformation. Why do those plasticity windows open? And here's the key. This week I've been talking about is specifically designed to open that window. When you reduce your cortisol, when you move, when you eat well, when you sleep, when you meditate, when you expose yourself to new experiences, when you break your routines, you're creating the conditions for your brain to enter a state of greater plasticity. And in that state, the changes you make consolidate faster and more deeply. It's as if your brain were clay. Normally it's dry clay, hard to mold, but during these plasticity windows, it becomes moist clay, malleable. That's why it's possible to become an unrecognizable person in a week, not because the week itself is magical, but because you're creating the conditions for your brain to change in an accelerated way. But here comes the critical warning: that window closes. If you don't consolidate the changes during that period, if you return to your old patterns when the window closes, you'll have lost the opportunity. That's why it's so important that you be intentional, that you be consistent, that you truly commit. And that's also why what you do after this week is important, because the changes you initiate here need to be reinforced, repeated, integrated into your life long term. This week isn't a destination, it's a starting point. It's the moment when you interrupt the pattern, when you create the crack in the system, but then comes the work of making that change sustainable. Here's what you need to do. First, identify which specific changes from this week had the greatest impact on you. It could be sleep, it could be exercise, it could be meditation, it could be human connection, whatever really moved something in you. Those are the changes you need to prioritize long term. Don't try to maintain everything perfectly, that's unsustainable, but identify the 2 or 3 key changes that really made a difference and commit to maintaining them. Second, build systems, don't depend on motivation. Motivation is ephemeral, it comes and goes. Systems are what sustain you when motivation disappears. If you want to meditate every morning, prepare your meditation space the night before. If you want to eat better, plan your meals on the weekend. If you want to exercise, leave your workout clothes ready the night before. Third, find support, someone who accompanies you in the process. It can be a friend, a family member, a therapist, a support group, someone you can say, "I'm committed to these changes and I need your support." Individual change is difficult, change in community is more sustainable. Fourth, be compassionate with yourself when you fail, because you will fail. You'll have days when you don't meditate, when you eat poorly, when you stay up late, when you return to your old patterns. And that doesn't mean everything is lost, it means you're human. Change isn't linear, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But if the general direction is forward, you're advancing. And fifth, review and adjust. Every month take time to reflect on what's working, what isn't. What do you need to add? What do you need to let go of? Your life isn't static, your needs change, so your practices also need to evolve. Now I need to warn you about the most common traps in this process. The first is the perfection trap. You'll want to do everything perfectly. You'll feel that if you don't follow every step to the letter, you've failed. And that's counterproductive. Perfectionism is the enemy of progress. It's better to do something imperfectly than to do nothing waiting for the perfect moment. If one day you can only meditate 5 minutes instead of 10, those 5 minutes count. If one day you eat something you shouldn't, it doesn't mean everything is ruined. One misstep doesn't erase all the forward steps. The second trap is comparison. You'll want to compare your progress with others. You'll see someone on social media who seems to have everything figured out and you'll feel you're going too slow. But each person's transformation is unique, your process is yours. There's no correct timeline. The third trap is trying to fix everything at once. This week I've given you many tools, many concepts, many practices, and your brain might feel overwhelmed thinking it has to implement everything simultaneously, right? It's not like that. Choose the 3 or 4 things that resonate most with you and start there. You can gradually add others. The fourth trap is the all or nothing trap. If I can't do this week perfectly, I'd better not start. If I already broke the diet, I might as well eat everything I want today. This binary thinking keeps you trapped. Life isn't black or white, there are 1,000 shades of grey, and progress happens in those shades of grey. The fifth trap, and perhaps the most dangerous, is doing this process for the wrong reasons. If you're trying to change to please someone else, to fit an external standard, to prove something to someone, it won't work long term. Sustainable change comes from a genuine internal desire to live a more authentic, fuller life, more aligned with who you really are. And the sixth trap is completely isolating yourself during this process. Yes, you need solitude, yes, you need space, but you also need connection. Don't distance yourself from people who love you in a healthy way. Don't reject support. Change doesn't mean becoming a hermit. It means finding a healthier balance between time with yourself and time with others. I want to return to the body because it's something we tend to intellectualize too much. We think change happens in the mind, in our thoughts, in our beliefs. And yes, that's part of the process, but your body holds the memory of everything you've lived. There's a fascinating concept called somatic memory. Your body remembers trauma, fear, tension, even when your conscious mind has forgotten it. That's why you can have intense physical reactions to situations that rationally shouldn't affect you so much. Your body is remembering something your mind has buried. That's why body work is so important. It's not enough to understand cognitively what's happening to you. You need to release what your body is storing. And that's done through movement, breathing, physical expression of emotions. When you feel sadness during this week, don't repress it. Cry with your whole body. When you feel anger, don't swallow it. Find safe ways to express it. Scream where no one can hear you. Hit a pillow, run until you can't anymore. When you feel joy, dance, laugh. Move your body in ways that express that joy. Your body needs to complete the emotional cycles you've been interrupting for years. And when you complete them, when you allow energy to flow through you instead of getting stuck, something changes profoundly. I've worked with people who have been in therapy for years talking about their trauma, but without really processing it. And sometimes a session of conscious movement, of allowing the body to express what the mind can't verbalize, generates more release than months of conversation. I'm not saying verbal therapy isn't important, it is, but the body also needs to be part of the healing process. We live in a culture that glorifies absolute independence. I don't need anyone, I can do everything alone. Asking for help is weakness, and that myth is killing us. Human beings aren't designed for complete self-sufficiency, we're designed for interdependence. We need others, we need support. We need to be seen, to be heard, to be accompanied. And recognizing that need isn't weakness, it's maturity, it's wisdom, it's honesty. During this week and for the rest of your life, you need a support network. You need people with whom you can be vulnerable. People who celebrate your victories and support you in your falls, people who tell you the truth even when it's uncomfortable. And that means you have to be willing to ask for help. You have to be willing to say, I'm not making it, I'm scared. I need someone to remind me why I'm doing this. And that can be terrifying, especially if you've built your identity around being the strong person, the one who can always handle everything. But letting go of that mask, allowing yourself to be seen in your vulnerability, is paradoxically where you'll find your true strength. Because real strength isn't never needing anyone. Real strength is knowing when you need support and having the courage to ask for it. I'm going to touch on a topic most people avoid. Your shadows, the parts of you that you don't like, that you've rejected, that you've tried to bury. Your anger, your envy, your selfishness, your cruelty, your dark impulses. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, spoke extensively about the concept of the shadow. He said that what you deny doesn't disappear, it just becomes unconscious, and from the unconscious it continues to operate, continues to influence your behavior, but in ways you can't control. When you deny your anger, it can come out in passive-aggressive ways, in ways that hurt others and yourself without you realizing it. When you deny your envy, it can transform into toxic resentment. When you deny your healthy selfishness, you can end up in patterns of destructive self-sacrifice. Shadow integration doesn't mean acting on all your impulses, it doesn't mean allowing yourself to be cruel or destructive. It means recognizing that those parts exist, that they're human, that they don't make you monstrous for having them. During this week, when thoughts or emotions that shame you arise, instead of immediately rejecting them, observe them with curiosity. Interesting. I feel envy for this person. What is that telling me about what I desire? I feel anger toward this situation. What boundary of mine is being violated? Your dark emotions contain information. They're not the enemy, they're messengers. And when you learn to listen to them without judging yourself, without becoming them, you gain access to an immense source of energy and self-knowledge. In the end, it all comes down to this: the ability to choose consciously. Not to react automatically, not to be on autopilot, not to be dragged by your impulses, your fears, your conditioning, but to choose. And conscious choice requires 3 things. First, awareness. You have to realize what's happening inside you and outside you. You have to be able to observe your thoughts, your emotions, your patterns without completely merging with them. Second, space. There has to be a space between the stimulus and the response. When someone criticizes you, there has to be a moment, even if it's only half a second, where you can choose how to respond instead of reacting automatically. And third, alternatives. You have to have more than one option. If you only know one way to respond to stress, you don't have a real choice. That's why all the tools I've given you in this video are so important. They're alternatives, they're options you didn't have before. This week is about expanding your capacity to choose, about creating internal space, about developing awareness, about adding tools to your toolbox so that when life presents you with challenges, you have more than one way to respond. And that's true freedom, not the absence of problems, not a perfect life without difficulties, but the ability to choose who you want to be in the face of any circumstance. We've reached the end of this journey, but actually this is just the beginning. Everything I've shared with you today isn't abstract theory, it's lived practice. They're tools that work when you apply them with consistency and honesty. You can become an unrecognizable person in a week, not because you're going to solve all your problems, not because you're going to reach some perfect version of yourself, but because you're going to interrupt the patterns that keep you trapped. You're going to open a plasticity window in your brain. You're going to create the conditions for real change to be possible, but this only works if you do it. It's not enough to understand the concepts, it's not enough to agree with the ideas, you have to implement, you have to practice, you have to commit. And yes, it will be uncomfortable, yes, there will be moments when you want to give up, yes, it will require courage, discipline, vulnerability, But on the other side of that discomfort is the life you've been yearning for, the version of yourself you know you can be. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait to have everything figured out. Don't wait to feel completely motivated. Start now. Start today. Start with the next conscious breath you take. And remember, you're not alone in this. There are thousands, millions of people around the world who are on this same path of transformation, who are consciously choosing to become the best version of themselves, who are doing the hard work of healing, growing, evolving. You're part of that community, and your transformation matters not just for you but for all of us. Because when one person heals, they raise the frequency of the entire collective. When one person awakens, they make it easier for others to awaken too. So do it, take the step. Commit to this week and observe what happens. Now, before I say goodbye, I need to ask you something. If this content has reached you, if you feel there's something here that can help you or help someone you know, I ask you to share it. Not for me, but because this information needs to reach more people. There are too many people suffering unnecessarily, trapped in patterns they don't know how to break. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Like this video, because that tells the algorithm this content is valuable and allows it to reach more people who need it. And above all, leave me a comment telling me what resonated with you from all this, what you're going to implement, what questions you have. I read all the comments and it helps me tremendously to understand what people most need to hear. And if you really want to deepen this work, if you feel you need more personalized support, seek professional help. A good therapist or psychologist can make an enormous difference. You don't have to do this completely alone. Remember, you have everything you need within you. You just need the tools to access it. And I've given you those tools today. Your brain is plastic, your life isn't determined, your past doesn't have to dictate your future. You can change, you can transform, you can become who you really are when you remove all the layers of conditioning, fear, and self-abandonment. And that person underneath all that, that's the unrecognizable person you'll discover, not someone new. But who you always were, finally free. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your courage to consider that change is possible, and above all, thank you for choosing yourself. And remember, the journey of transformation begins with a single step, and you've already taken it by being here today.